Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And obviously, we're at a little bit different time here today because of homeroom. So glad you guys figured that out. As I'm taking attendance here, what I'm going to ask you to do, first off, Thursday is going to be my evaluation in this class with my, not professor, with my department chair. So I need those of you who don't have your video on, at least show me that you can turn your video on, because on Thursday, I'm definitely going to need you to have the video on at least to start class. All right. And show face, please. Not the ceiling or the fan, or else I'm going to get dinged for it, and that means my life will be worse. Subsequently, yours probably won't get better. Let's just be honest. Okay. We're getting close. Owen's probably not paying attention, I'm assuming. Owen's out there. Hello, Owen. That'd be cool, man, if you could get that. Oh, there you go. All right, well, I would win that one. Just, it can't take me like 3 minutes. You guys, on Thursday, that is 2 days from today, we need to join with our cameras on and not have the ceiling fan on. I'm good at teaching in the ceiling fan, but it's probably not the best thing to do. All right, let's rock and roll. Got a question for you guys. Look at the question and then put what you think is the correct answer in the chat function, okay? Put what you think is the correct answer in the chat function. Do that now, please. Thanks. All right, we got 26 participants, 27 including myself. I got 16 answers. During the 17th century, one of the reasons Africans participated in the Atlantic slave trade was A, demand for weapons among African elites, B, bribery of African leaders by Caribbean plantation owners, C, desire of African leaders to dominate the Atlantic trade network, or D, the ambition of African leaders to gain a foothold in the Americas. So I've got 19 responses so far. That means I got people that don't want to respond or people that are as a ceiling fan showing. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5, 6. So 7 people missed it. Correct answer is, I'm gonna press on here. A. Okay. So this was in reference to the what's known as the guns for slaves cycle that was created by Europeans as they started to expand into the interior of the continent of Africa. Okay. All right. This is an important lesson today because it's these type of lessons which you may be less aware of that end up coming back on the AP exam. I think a lot of times it's because not because they like to get you, that attitude, but because they like to see if students and teachers are paying attention to maybe some more peripheral things that aren't as common per se. So I'm going to kind of start on the notes, and if you guys have a question, ask in the chat function or use the hand raise, and we'll see how long this takes. It maybe take 25 minutes, it maybe take 30, it might take 40. I don't really know yet. I got a lot. I've been doing a lot of research, and I got a lot on my mind, and we'll see what happens, okay? For those of you who answered A, nice job. All right, let's get to it. So we skipped some stuff in the continent of Africa anyways that we kind of needed to talk about. Man, I don't know if I want you guys with your videos on. I got like people doing hairstyles. I got people smashing Sammys. I got all sorts of stuff going on. It's all right. I think your hair looks beautiful either way. It's okay. All right. Well, things that we kind of missed that we need to go back to thinking about. Islam spread down the East African coast. East Africa is the right side on the map typically, okay? They were called the Swahili coastal trading states, and the word Swahili literally means a mix of Bantu-based language and Swahili, which is, Bantu-based language and Arabic to make Swahili, which is one of the more common spoken languages in the East African area of Africa today, okay? The other thing to think about is, if you remember right, briefly we talked about how Islam spread to the sub-Saharan states of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai after it spread after right around 1450, and it only spread to the elites, not to the not a lot of spread to the poor, because it was seen as a means to make more money. Okay, so if everyone understands that and you guys are all golden tickets on that, then we can move on, which we're going to do. All right, so obviously we're going to start with the slave trade, and I want everyone to be aware that what I'm talking about today still has a significant impact on the United States and in the Americas in general and on the world. And racism had been around for a long time, but it definitely has contributed to racism and a lot of the problems that are in our own country and our own culture. So again, important for you guys to understand kind of the roots of this. And this system was absolutely awful. And when I tell you guys this, again, I'm not doing it for the shock and awe factor. I'm doing it for you guys to be educated and, again, so that you can understand why some of the things are the way they are. So let's talk about the volume of the slave trade. In the 15th century, up until about 1450, slaves were being traded to Portugal, okay, from the west coast of Africa to Europe through Portugal. And that was because the Portuguese were the first to set up plantations on the west coast of Africa. 16th century, so the 1500s, it wasn't as big. That's, remember, when a lot of the natives were being killed in the Americas. But by the 1600s and 1700s, you can see, particularly the 1700s, massive growth in the slave trade due to the growth of a particular type of economic system. I need somebody to put in the chat function right now what economic system I am referring to. I've made you reference this at least 3 times in this course already, maybe 4 times. What economic system would require demand? Lily Dole. Bingo. You got it right. Mercantilism. Okay? As more colonies were created and more dependence on mercantilism and basically making as much money off colonies became the model economic system for Europeans. You can see the drastic effects of the continent of Africa and what that meant for the slave trade. Okay, by the 19th century, the Industrial Revolution is going to take off, and that's going to slow down the slave trade and also abolitionary movements and more Europeans moving to the Americas changes. Okay, all right. Take a look at this picture, please. Here you're going to see where the main areas of slaves were taken. A lot of this was in your reading, but I don't think the maps were very good. And then you'll see where the majority were taken to. The there's one thing I want you to notice. If you look out on the continent of Africa right here on this map, if you look at the arrows that are pointing north on the continent of Africa and east, one thing that that I personally as a teacher have not kept in mind is that 3 million Africans were also taken from the central and east and north coast into being part of the slave trade, either in the Indian Ocean trade network or along the Mediterranean and the Arab world. Okay. And that contributes to the depopulation of the continent of Africa. All right, here's another good image for you if you can look at this, okay? You're going to notice that Brazil had a large majority of slaves that were transported to Brazil, but take a look at the Caribbean, okay? And if you look at the Caribbean closely, it might help you understand why places like Jamaica to this day, 99% of people can trace their lineage back to the continent of Africa. Okay, 99% in Jamaica. Okay, and it's that much on other islands as well, and that's because of the demand for labor. Now, in the triangular trade network, the middle passage was known as the passage from the West African coast to either the South, like the Americas, or Central America, or the Caribbean, okay? And then also the Southern United States, okay, or the Southern British colonies at that point. Now, once you guys get a good look at these pictures, please. I know you looked at them a little bit yesterday, but Africans that were forcibly removed from their villages and from their own homes were given on average, as in this passage, 4 square feet. So I'm not good at math, but when I have you in the room, I actually to get a ruler out, and it's like 18 by 12. So can you imagine being confined to an 18 by 12 inch space? The smell, the odor, the heat, you're crossing across the ocean and the equator. The death rate is anywhere from 15 to 20%. But could be much higher. They just don't have accurate records. Other things to think about: these slaves that were taken to the coast during these slave wars, they were shaved, made sure that they had no hair on them. They were put on the ship. They were forced to dance and move around on the ship, forced to eat so that they didn't starve to death, shackled with manacles and heavy harnesses so that they would not be able to jump overboard. And again, that's why the mortality rate was so high, and that's why slave ship owners would lie about their numbers so that they didn't have to account for the deaths and the sharks that followed these ships. Now, the labor, and the reason why so many laborers were needed was sugar labor, sugar plantation labor, okay? Sugar was very important, obviously, to diets and to the growing tea culture of the British and European colonies. And sugar, on the picture on the left, okay, needs to, like, sugar cane actually has to be crushed, and then it makes a liquid. Well, that liquid has to be dried, and you have to work with that. I can't remember the substance, the name I'm actually looking for, but if you don't deal with it right away within like 12 hours of after you've crushed it into a liquid form, it's no longer good to make actual pure sugar. And so that meant that slaves would have to work 24 hours a day, days on days and endlessly. And so that's why the mortality rate, and you can see all of this is done with no safety equipment, no gloves, no type of, shoes or anything like that. And so that's just going to lead to mortality rates being high on these plantations as well. All right, so kind of a reversal in going back here. Okay, slavery was common in African society because it was used as a means to control populations and to control wealth. And so slave wars were very common. Congo, Ghana, Benin, it's on there, Mali, Songhai. Like these slave wars were common because all the land was owned by the state, like the kings. And so if you owned slaves, that was a means for you to gain wealth. These slaves could buy themselves to freedom. They had a term length on their slavery. It was not what we call chattel slavery. Chattel was not that. It was not slaves as property. And when the Europeans arrived, they drastically changed what slavery looked like. And again, under this pretense that it already existed, well, they said, well, then it was okay. But it wasn't. But it was, again, like I said, a means to manipulate that system to meet their economic gains and need. All right. Moving on then. If you guys look at Africa around 1800, okay, just in the little area that is pictured on what's called the Golden Ivory Coast, you can see that almost every single European country had a slave fort, or what do you want to call a slave port, upon where they would gather slaves and then take them across on the Middle Passage. Competition between different tribes and different kingdoms was already endless before the Europeans arrived in the 1400s. But after that, because of the idea that you throw in new technologies, new foods, particularly guns, and it's going to lead to an unnatural balance in different kingdoms taking over. And it's going to lead to kind of a different attitude. Now it is, instead of using wars to kind of exchange slaves, we're going to be having wars to gather as much slaves as possible to then sell them and get access to European guns and goods, which is then going to lead you to be able to win more wars. And one thing I wanted you guys to understand, if you look at this map, was the Europeans did not have the strength. They did not have the medicine, sleeping sickness, malaria, to be able to travel to the interior of Africa. And so they basically used force and bribery through their own economic goods to get slaves brought to the coast for them. All right, so example of the kingdom that benefited from the slave trade on the continent of Africa was the Ashanti. Okay, the Ashanti was on the Gold Coast in that little part of the map I just showed you, which is where modern-day Ghana is. It's not where the ancient kingdom of Ghana was, not really even close. The ancient kingdom of Ghana was closer to the Niger River and north. The Ashanti were members of the Akan people, and it was 20 small states that were different clans, and the most prominent clan that came to benefit from trading with Europeans was the Akoyo. And then the Akoyo, when they gained access to firearms, basically centralized the area around the Gold Coast and allowed for Europeans then to build these forts, and they continue to bring them slaves, and in return they got molasses, rum, iron weapons, iron tools, iron silverware, different things like that. Again, creating an unnatural balance. I wanted to show you guys, this is the fort at Elmina. Some of you have seen it before, but this was started off as a Portuguese fort that eventually became Dutch. And what happened then is the Akoyo forced other Akans to pay tribute, Akan clans. And basically, if they're not using slave wars, they're just forcing them to pay in men. And that works until you run out of men. And then when you run out of men, then you got to have someone else go further into the interior and continue to just take men. And that worked. The Ashanti were able to set up a kingdom doing that and dealing with the Dutch at Elmina. But again, you're talking about the loss of people and the kind of this ideology that paying tribute and slavery was okay. And that's going to lead to more war. And there's still a lot of wars to this day in areas around the continent of Africa because of the attitude that these kingdoms that were able to deal with Europeans created in the 1600s. The Congo is an interesting example as well. The Congo was up the mouth of the Congo River, which is absolutely huge. And the Portuguese were the first to find it. And the altruistic, I guess you guys aren't in my room, so that's satire. The Portuguese tried to convert the people of the Key Congo, or the Congo people, to Christianity, Roman Catholicism. So much that the leader and his son, the leader converted, and he sent his son to Portugal to become schooled as a priest. But over time, the king started to realize, King Alfonso, that all of his people were disappearing. And so when he asked and he pleaded to the Pope and he pleaded to the Portuguese to stop, they didn't stop. And so this is one of those stories where a huge number of slaves came out of the Congo and was this flourishing kingdom that, again, attempted to even become European by adopting Christianity, but ultimately failed. We'll talk more about the Congo when we get into imperialism and when the Europeans used their technology to actually move into the interior in the 1800s. All right, the Cape Colony. Cape Colony is modern-day South Africa, and the Dutch East India Company established the Cape of Good Hope there in 1652. And from there, they set up basically a farming society, just like they had in the Netherlands, except they didn't have peasant workers. So to replace peasant workers, they used slaves. And at first they brought in slaves from all over Indonesia and from East Africa, but then they just enslaved the natives that they basically bordered up against as the Cape Colony started to grow. And so these Dutch settlers that are called Boers, we've talked about them before, continued to expand out of the Cape Colony. And even though it became British in 1815, I've got a stat on here that I think is pretty interesting. So by 1800, there were 17,000 European settlers in South Africa, or in Cape Colony, 26,000 slaves and 14,000 free natives. So obviously you can do the math on that, and this is going to lead to apartheid, which was the racial policy employed after World War II in South Africa, which South Africa is still, again, trying to economically reclaim some kind of equality for anyone of color due to the racial laws that were implemented there. And you have to go back to this history here to see why that happened. All right, the Swahili coastal trading states were largely connected to the Indian Ocean trade network, okay, up until really the Muslims on the Arab traders and the Dhow. We talked a little bit about the Arab Dhow. They controlled trade along the East African coast. Kilwa was the capital, a bunch of different states. You had Muslim rulers who built big palaces along the coast. But what ended up happening then was when the Portuguese arrived, they took over this land, and then they started growing Asian spices that they got from Asia in East Africa. They copied the European plantation system because they had land and they had the ability to do it. And for example, Zanzibar had 100,000 slaves by 1860. And so most people don't realize that East Africa, again, had this growing plantation system. And originally, it was involved in trade in the Indian Ocean Trade Network, and it traded a lot of precious metals and different, even animals. But the Europeans changed it and attempted to make it, again, plantation-based, farming-based trade. Sudanic Africa. So let me explain where that is. That's going to be basically just south of the Sahara Desert. Songhai was the last of the three sub-Saharan kingdoms. They in fact ruled all the way until the mid 1500s. But when they fell, the people that had sided with the Muslim traders, those are the Islamic elites, did not get along with the natives who did most of the labor, because of the fact that they had basically looked like sellouts and had taxed them pretty hard. And so this kind of violence and this upheaval between animalistic and native religion and then Islam caused this area to have a lot of war, which allowed for the taking of men and slaves easier for these more powerful kingdoms that were on the West Coast. 1770s, you start to see this reform movement where a purified Sufi Islam is pushed on people, and you start to see more conversion. And to this day, that's one of the strongest areas of Islamic control and highest population of Muslims in the world. An example of this that's closer to the coast is going to be the Sokoto Caliphate by Usman Dan Fodio. He claimed that he was a descendant of Allah, and in the Hausa kingdoms there, that's a little bit south of Benin, he preached this jihad, saying that it was time for Muslims to unite. And in Nigeria, they're going to establish this caliphate that lasts deep into the 1800s. And to this day, again, in Nigeria and around that area, you have a huge Muslim presence. It was reformist Islam, so they tried to make people learn, have an educated class, get rid of animalistic native practices, and make sure that people, like, again, Muslim was the majority religion, and less syncretism with Islam, meaning, get rid of some of these local customs and traditions. All right. I'm going to call it a day on that because what I wanted to do real quick here was revisit I'm going to revisit, I'm going to have to go to this, I think. Yeah, and revisit what you guys need to do tonight, okay? Under modules, and then down to 928 DBQ worksheet. Let's see how many I have uploaded. I only have 5 uploaded, okay? So by 11:59 tonight, I need to see, this needs to be uploaded if you want to get credit for it, okay? And we were doing this period 9 also. We even did one of our groupings, African prisoners were meant to feel like less than humans. Okay, that would be one of my 3 main points of my thesis, okay? We also did the same contextualization that you guys did. So all you really need to do tonight is finish analyzing the documents, put them into your 3 groups. Okay, we used document 2 and 3, but I would have probably found more if we would have read more. And then we did point of view for at least 2 people. Said document 2 was credible, first-hand account of someone who lived through the Middle Passage. Document 3 was lacking detail, possibly wrong, and made just to please the audience. Okay, so I expect you guys to do that for at least 4 documents. And then put down your, and obviously you can type it and do it like I did, but put down your groups. You see what my topic sentence would be, and then finish with your thesis. Okay, that's a lot, but It's okay for now. I'm going to go ahead and, again, give you guys a few minutes to finish this up to be respectful of your time. Does anybody have any questions? As you're thinking, tomorrow, remember you have a notes quiz, so you listened today. I didn't go over the whole chapter. I mean, I went over important stuff from my end, but I did reread the whole chapter yesterday just for fun. I watched a bunch of videos because I was really just jonesing it. And yeah, so the quiz tomorrow is 15 questions. Pretty typical reading quiz straight out of the book. And then we'll work on another document tomorrow. Thursday, themes, maybe a little more document work, and then Friday, the inner outer discussion. Okay, and then you guys get a 9-day lovely break from the Mr. Burnett. Okay. No, I didn't just put the in front of my name. That's bad karma. Sorry. All right. You guys don't have any questions. Get out of here. Have a fantastic afternoon.